In an age when a smartphone can calculate free-fall acceleration down to the millisecond, it feels almost surreal that the instrument panel of a $100 million jet still displays speed in knots. The word knot sounds like something reserved for old sailing manuals. Yet there it is, right beside pressure sensors, weather radar, and autopilot systems. This strange pairing is not a historical accident. It is evidence of a time when crossing the ocean depended entirely on reflexes, rope, and a water-soaked piece of wood. And if you follow the trail of that floating block, you step directly into the shared history of maritime speed and modern aviation. A few hundred years ago, anyone leaving port entered a world without anchors of certainty. No radar, no satellites, no grid-based maps like the ones we glance at on navigation apps today. For sailors of that era, an entire voyage was guided by wind direction, the sun's movement, and the vibration of the ship beneath their feet. A subtle shift in ocean currents could push a fleet hundreds of kilometers off course, roughly the distance between two major cities that we now fly. In under an hour, with so little data available, they needed a way to measure speed, not for prestige, but to estimate their own position on a curved ocean surface. Sailing half a day too far east might mean reaching an entirely different coastline. Translated into modern terms, that margin of error would be like your GPS shifting you into another country simply because you drove a few extra minutes. Under those conditions, sailors had no choice but to improvise. Their innovation did not come from laboratories or mathematical models. It came from the limited supplies on board. Among them, a floating wooden block became the primary speed measuring device. What seems bewildering today is that this crude solution worked with a level of reliability that even modern positioning systems cannot dismiss. The mechanism was remarkably simple. A sailor would throw the wooden piece into the sea, attaching it to a long rope marked with evenly spaced knots. As the ship moved forward, the wooden block remained nearly stationary due to water resistance. The rope would slide through the sailor's hands, and they would count how many knots passed between their fingers in exactly 28 seconds. That number represented the ship's speed in knots. At first glance, this sounds less like a navigational instrument and more like a mindfulness exercise. Yet within the context of its time, each knot symbolized the distance a ship would travel in 1 hour. The interval was standardized using a 2-8-second sandglass. A slight miscalculation in timing could distort the entire estimate of position. With every grain of sand that fell, the ship's location was updated within a mathematical system the sailors themselves may never have seen written on paper. The real fascination lies here. Despite its primitive form, the system was surprisingly accurate on a global scale. Each knot corresponded to a fraction of a nautical mile, and the nautical mile is directly tied to Earth's latitude grid. Counting knots meant calculating movement across a rotating sphere. In modern terms, you could describe this as an analog speed sensor. It had no microprocessor. Yet it replicated the core function that contemporary technology still preserves. By the 19th century, steamships appeared, and speed measurement improved with underwater rotating propellers. Yet the unit, the knot, remained embedded in maritime thinking. 1 hour passing meant 1 nautical mile traveled. This logic merged seamlessly with how navigation interpreted movement across Earth's surface. Because a nautical mile equals 1 minute of latitude, position calculations remained consistent regardless of vessel type. When aviation emerged, engineers faced a similar challenge, moving across a curved surface while using a unit compatible with the global coordinate grid. The statute mile did not serve this need, as it originated from land-based measurements and lacked any geometric relationship with Earth's structure. The nautical mile, N by contrast, was defined according to the planet's geometry. Using knots became the natural choice. That is why the cockpit displays of Boeing and Airbus aircraft still show KTAS and KIAS true airspeed and indicated airspeed in knots. Modern sensors measure air pressure, calculate airflow differentials, and process data through advanced avionics systems. Yet the output remains a value converted from the same unit once determined by rope and wood. Pilots no longer throw blocks into the sky. But when they see 480 kT glowing on a digital screen, they are still operating within the reference system, sailors created centuries ago in a moment of practical necessity. A knot is more than a relic. It is an agreement between past and present, where ancient logic continues to solve the problems posed by modern technology. Sailors measured speed with rope because they had no better alternative. Pilots measure speed in knots because every other alternative fits less efficiently into the global navigation framework. The distance between these two eras collapses into a single, seemingly peculiar unit of speed. If you enjoy discovering how modern engineering quietly reveals its improbable origins, there is always more to uncover. Many of the designs we use every day trace back to decisions made centuries ago, decisions that seemed improvised at the time. Each thread we follow ties the present just a little closer to history.